Prodigy is a newer character who also happened to be one of the newest recruits to the main X-Men team at the last Hellfire Gala. Yeah, that didn't work out so well. He made his first appearance back in the 2003 New Mutants series in issue number 4, and would go on to join up with the new X-Men, become a leader for the younger X-Men on Utopia, serve as a member of the Young Avengers, and eventually come back around to Krakoa, serving as a member of X-Factor before eventually getting elected to join the X-Men, just in time for the roster to be brutally destroyed. Prodigy is known as David Lane. He is cool, but honestly pretty squishy. His mutant powers allow him to subconsciously absorb the knowledge and skills of those around him while they are in his vicinity. He did, however, gain back past knowledge he'd had at one point thanks to the Stepford Cuckoos, which ended up elevating him to super genius status, putting him on a similar level to some of the most brilliant minds in all of the Marvel Universe. Who do you think is the smartest person in the Marvel Universe, by the way? Let us know down in the comments. Also, stick around to the end of this video because I got a crazy thing I'm gonna tell you about. It's crazy, trust me. Most people would never think of Miss Marvel inherently when they think of X-Men. Until, maybe, now that is. Kamala was recently made an Inhuman and mutant hybrid in the comics, where after her death and resurrection, it was established that she possessed an X gene kind of long dormant, which had now been activated by her resurrection. Some folks were not fans of this change, but honestly, it is oddly more in line with the creators of the character's wishes for her when they made her. Initially, Kamala was designed with the origin of mutant in mind, but as Marvel did not have the rights for X-Men at that time, they instead wanted to make her an Inhuman as part of a push to make, the Inhumans as popular, if not more so, than the mutants. And with Kamala being established as the first mutant in the MCU, Marvel decided to change her origin in the comics as well. As such, Kamala also recently joined up with the X-Men, eager to see what her mutant power set would be when it manifested, but also struggling to process the hate that mutants deal with on a daily basis. Rasputin 4 is an interesting mutant who actually has had 2 different first appearances, but both of them were pretty recent. Technically, these were different versions of the same character though. Rasputin initially appeared during Moira Mctaggert's 9th life, but also appears during Sins of Sinister in an alternate timeline created by Sinister using Moira's mutant powers. While in the 9th life of Moira, back in the Dawn of X days, Rasputin ends up dying, the version who exists in Sinister's created timeline from Sins of Sinister actually makes her way to Earth 616 and ends up in the main continuity, teaming up with the X-Men there. Rasputin is a chimera who is created by Sinister and who possesses as such the combined powers, abilities, and genes of Colossus, Quentin Quire's Kid Omega, Unis the Untouchable, Kitty Pryde, and Laura Kinney, aka Talon or Wolverine, whichever you prefer. Armor is the main character of the Ultimate X-Men series. She is known there simply as Hisako Ichiki, the same name as Armor's in the mainline comics. At the beginning of the series, she is set to graduate middle school, but we learn that she has not been attending class in the lead up to her graduation due to the sudden loss of her friend Tsubasa. Tsubasa was mistreated by the other students and struggled in school as a result. However, Hisako did not really know just how haunted Tsubasa was by this and was surprised when it was revealed that he'd later taken his own life. From this dark beginning, we are launched into the series and follow along with Hisako, who pulls on the thread of the origins of the mysterious being who appears to claim to avenge Tsubasa, known as Shadow or the Shadow, likely a version of the Shadow King, all while uncovering that Hisako herself has her own secret. She seems to be a mutant with superpowers that she struggles to understand and also struggles to control. Storm may have been around for a good long while in the comics, but this version of the character is completely new. She made her first appearance earlier this year in Ultimate Black Panther in issue number 1. Here, Aurora Monroe is a mutant with power over the elements known as Wind Rider. She fights against Khonshu and Ra alongside her partner and her lover, Killmonger. However, while Wind Rider is with Killmonger here, there is a prophecy involving her that tells of her destiny to deliver the heir to Wakanda, seemingly alongside the King T'Challa. So we'll have to see how that goes. May Storm is my favorite, I think, of the new Ultimate X-Men characters. May Storm is clearly inspired by Storm, but really does seem to be her own character. She actually first appeared as one of the new Champions variant covers that we got, appearing on the cover of X-Men issue number 27, where she was drawn and designed by Peach Momoko. As part of that project, May was created to basically be a Storm protege. All the variants were designed as such, with younger takes on characters being showcased so we can imagine what sort of sidekick for said character would be like. I think that's what I like most about May. While inspired by Storm, she also feels fully original in terms of her characterization and is a very different person from the original Storm from the comics. Doubly so in May's case, who exists in the same universe as Ultimate Earth 616 6160 Storm, aka Wind Rider, but who, like I said, is, I just feel, very different. When it comes to Ultimate X-Men issue number 3, we actually get to meet a few new and exciting characters. Chiefly among the new mutants that we're meeting here are a group who also seem to be mutants, but who are not connected to Maystorm or even to Armor. Other than the fact that, I guess, well, they all happen to be in the same class. I wonder if also them being in the same class is by someone's design. Among this group is Mori. Mori is believed to be a mutant, but it's still very early days in terms of the mystery of her character and that of Ultimate X-Men in general, to be honest. When it comes to Mori, she appears to be an alternate version of Molly Hayes, which would make sense considering some of the other characters featured here and their mainline connection to the Runaways team. In the main continuity, Molly's mutant power is that she has super strength, and she's actually considered even to be one of the strongest characters in Marvel. With Mori, we're not as certain of her powers or if she's really even an alternate version of Molly just yet, but of course time will tell. If she is Molly, I gotta say I am loving the Runaways inspiration that seems to be kind of mixed in throughout here. For some reason, Natsu gives me Kitty Pryde vibes, but it's actually believed that she might be an alternate to Scott Summers' Cyclops in the Ultimate X-Men series and universe of Earth 6160. People suspect this of Natsu because of her name, which means summer, as in, you know, summers perhaps, and because she is one red eye, which is concealed by an eye patch. Some have also compared her character design to that of Scott's, seeing some similarities and cues even in the tracksuit that she wears here, which people are likening to Scott's look. Natsu just made her first appearance, so we'll have to wait and see what role she will play in this very different X-Men series and team. This is a really interesting one. Nico Minoru of Earth 6160 makes her first appearance in Ultimate X-Men issue number 3, and seems to vary quite a bit from her Earth 616 main continuity counterpart, while also bearing some similarities there. Now in the main line, Nico is known for being a human who was born into a family of dark magic users who regularly performed ritual sacrifices. She ends up joining up with the Runaways and decides to rebel against her parents' plans for her, instead becoming a hero and force for good. In Ultimate, however, she instead seems to be another mutant who can detect others. At least that's what seems to be implied here. She also seems to have a magical air about her, and it's rumored that her parents are also tied to the supernatural in some way. So it's possible this version of Nico could be a magic user and a mutant as well. I mean, it definitely feels like it's a variation on the character. What's so interesting about Serge in Ultimate X-Men is that we don't really know what her motivation is or who she is working for yet, if anyone. She might just be doing her own thing. All we know is that Serge in this reality seems to be interested in exposing mutants, or at least one mutant out there in particular, and that is Hisako, who we know better in terms of her main continuity counterpart as Armor. That being said, it seems that Serge herself is a mutant, likely inspired by the mutant of the same name in the comics. Like her 616 counterpart, she seems to be able to harness the power of electricity, but unlike her 616 counterpart, this version of Serge seems to kind of have a better initial handle on her powers, not seemingly needing the gauntlets we're used to seeing her with in regards to her 616 version. I honestly can't wait to see what else we can learn about Serge as time goes on, and if she herself will get her own issue focused solely on her, kinda like how we had with May as well.
Starting off at number 10, we have Forget Me Not. I wanted to start this list off really small, with a character y'all may not know. Mainly because almost no one knows him because that's his power. Appearing in 2014, Forget Me Not had actually been a member of the X-Men for several years before this, but thanks to his abilities, no one can remember him. Forget Me Not's abilities make it so that he is imperceptible in all forms, basically. The power is so good that even Charles Xavier himself had to place a psychic reminder on himself so that he would remember Forget Me Not's existence. Clearly that means some of the most powerful telepaths have difficulty discovering him, let alone remembering him. His power is to be forgotten, but the unique ways this power could be used, and the uniqueness of this power in general, will keep him in my mind. Number 9, we got I-Boy. Why is a guy named I-Boy on a list of strongest members of the X-Men? I see you, like many of the other mutants, are very judgmental. Trevor Hawkins' body is covered in eyes, 57 to be exact, which give him an array of powers that honestly, you kinda may expect. Microscopic, telescopic, X-ray, night, infrared, and thermal vision are all a part of his power list. But he can also detect chemicals, is an excellent marksman, and is skilled in nonverbal communication. He can almost read other people's minds by reading reading their behaviors and body language. He is an incredible tracker. He can predict attacks and can read people's histories just by looking at them. He can pinpoint weak spots in machines and people, is able to see electronic wavelengths and microwaves, is able to see past illusions and disguises as well as magic waves. He makes an amazing detective, in short. On top of all that, he can even pass what he sees onto others, but he has to be physically close enough for it to work. But to top it all off, the craziest and most unexpected power he possesses recently is solar blasts. We don't know how just yet, but Trevor can emit intense bursts of bright yellow energy and focused beams of extrastellar force that cause sunburns and radiation poisoning. Coming in at number 8, it's Gwenpool. I think Gwenpool has one of the strangest powers. That would be the power of medium interaction, which is because she comes from a reality very much like ours, as in superheroes are fictional people in comic books. So, when Gwen was transported to a pocket universe that recreated her home reality, Gwen's perception of the fictional world allowed her to gain the ability to recognize and manipulate the artistic medium that she was now in. She can see and physically interact with lettering and caption boxes, and touch and even break through panel gutters, allowing her to transport objects short distances through space and time by moving them across panels, and she interacts with different instances of herself from multiple panels on the same page. Now, I don't know if you've realized this, but this kind of means Gwendolyn Poole can kind of warp reality in a way. She kind of becomes one of the most crazily powerful characters in comics, at least potentially. She first showed up in Howard the Duck Volume 6 number 1 in November of 2015, and she has actually teamed up with many different characters and teams, including being a member of the X-Men on and off again. Number 7, Laura Kinney. I know, she isn't really new as a character, but Laura Kinney, or X-23, has become the all-new Wolverine, and that is relatively new. She officially joined the X-Men as this Wolverine at the Hellfire Gala in 2021. There are a few characters with powers similar to Wolverine, and there are even a few who are clones of Laura herself. But of all these characters, Laura is certainly the best and definitely the most fan-loved. Her powers are very similar to Logan's, with her primary mutant power being an accelerated healing factor. And obviously, she also has retractable bone claws, only she has 2 in her forearms and 1 in her foot. Well, each foot. She was obviously a clone and grew up being made to be a weapon, so of course she has an extremely haunted past. But with Logan as a father figure in her life, she grew up under him, and she even did the same for Gabrielle Kinney, another clone who Laura considers to be her younger sister. She's already done so much, but I just kinda can't wait to see what else she does as Wolverine. Number 6! It's Synch. Everett Thomas isn't a new character by any means, being first introduced in 1994, but while he was a part of Generation X, he didn't officially land on the team until this newest iteration of X-Men. He was also one of the first mutants resurrected by the Five on Krakoa, due to the fact that his powers could enable him to act as a substitute for any of the Five who might need to tag out. With that said, what are his powers? Synch's powers are known as synchronistic power replication. Synch basically produces this really cool funkadelic looking aura that allows him to synchronize with other supers in his vicinity, letting him use their powers unless they leave the vicinity. But what's really interesting is that he doesn't need that person to be completely there. So if you had like a tissue sample from a superpowered person, he could sync with that and it would be enough. Since his resurrection, his powers have been amped up, giving him a limited memory bank of powers he's synced with. He became an official base member of the new X-Men team announced at the Hellfire Gala alongside Laura Kinney in X-Men Volume 5 number 21 in 2022. Number 5. Zorn. Question: what would you do if you and your twin brother developed the mutant ability of having your head become a star? Answer: I honestly don't know how you would still be alive to decide what to do in the first place. Shen Zorn and his twin brother Quan Yin Zorn both developed mutant powers that, in essence, were tiny stars that burned away and replaced their actual heads. They were both isolated, and they both wear super cool looking iron helmets with power dampeners to contain their power from doing too much damage. Shen is called Zorn with a Z, and his head is actually technically a black hole. And to keep things not confusing, Quan Yin is also named Zorn, but with an X. Okay, so what the heck can they do with their powers? Well, both of these characters can produce gravitational electromagnetism, which could actually allow them to heal others and use telepathy, and also, really weirdly, somehow allowed them to sense when people died and speak using shaking gravitational particles. Zorn, the one with a Z, could suck people into his black hole and even even turn his black hole back into a sun. They could also both obviously do a lot of damage, using the power of a star to burn, blind, and incinerate people. They both became members of the X-Men at different times. Zorn was the first in 2002, but he wasn't always good, and his brother Zed Zorn joined more than a few years later. Number 4, it's Doop. First appearing in X-Force number 116 in 2001, Doop's origin story is kind of hard to explain, because we don't know for a fact what it is. Captain America tells us he was a US Cold War weapons project, and he apparently had some kind of role in the fall of communism. He was originally a member of X-Force until eventually becoming a member of X-Static. For such an unthreatening character, Doop is surprisingly strong. He has been described as being an extra-dimensional being with a genius-level intellect, bordering on possible omniscience. And he has a large array of psionic powers, one of which includes controlling Russians. He can change his size and shape at will, allowing him to heal wounds and reassemble parts of his body if they have been removed or cut off. He has an incredible level of super strength and durability as well, with an unknown limit, being able to match and overcome Thor in a fight when he was in a weakened state, taking hits from Mjolnir while he did so. He seems to be able to come back from the afterlife, and he also has a pocket dimension inside himself that he can store things in and summon creatures from. He can also completely break the fourth wall and go across the comic panels. Doop has defeated the devil all by himself. He is overpowered, and I don't know how anyone loses with him on their team. Coming in at number 3, it's Tempest. Eva Bell first was seen in All New X-Men number 1 in 2012, when we also saw her mutant powers manifest. She was out with friends and a boy when her brother showed up and began to get into a fight with that boy. The stress and duress of the situation caused her powers to pop off, and she completely froze everyone within a city block of her in time for 20 hours, until the X-Men showed up, helped her, and then took her in. She's been referred to as near Omega level, with her ability of chronokinesis within a time bubble, meaning she can freeze and slow down time and is one of the best at it in the world. She can also speed up time in the bubble by decades if she chooses to, which is why she's a member of the Five, to age up whoever is being resurrected. And she can even time travel. Although she has shown to lose control over this power from time to time, there is no doubt she is and can become more incredibly powerful. Number 2, Elixir. Joshua Foley, otherwise known as Elixir, is a mutant with Omega level healing abilities. He's incredibly powerful, and while originally was just considered a general threat, he can actually use his powers offensively as well, completely ending lives if he wants to. Using his mutant ability of biokinesis, Elixir is capable of controlling the biological structure of his own and other people's bodies down to the genetic level. Now this started off small, but has grown to allow him to simultaneously heal dozens of people, resurrect himself and others, and even the ability to control, manipulate, and absorb the life forces of other living creatures. Offensively, he can use his death touch to harm others, to cause different types of illness, massive swellings, and organ failure. He's even completely destroyed the body of enemies before. He is one of the core members of the Five, as I'm sure no one is surprised about, and he has been a member of the X-Men ever since he was one of the only surviving mutants who retained his powers at the Xavier Institute after M-Day, and he was trained to become one in 2006's New Mutants. Number 1, Hope Summers. Hope Summers was the first mutant born after the events of M-Day, the mutant decimation, or the day that Scarlet Witch cast No More Mutants. She was then taken into the far future and raised by Cable, being carried around in the coolest baby Bjorn you'll ever see. Not too long after, she returned to the present and her mutant powers finally activated. Her power is basically that of Omega level power manipulation. She can manipulate the powers of other mutants nearby to her, even mimicking their powers, but at full capacity and with complete control over those powers. And she can even take on multiple powers at once, but it is pretty tiring for her to do that. A large part of her role in the Krakoan society is as the leader of the Five, who use their abilities to resurrect the mutants of Krakoa. Her role on the Five specifically is both to boost their powers to their full potential and help them work in synergy with each other perfectly. She also helped terraform Mars alongside Vulcan and Proteus, giving them enough power to actually do it. She is such a cool character character, and she first appeared back in X-Men Volume 2 number 205 in 2008, but was a child for much of that until she came of age and joined X-Force and the X-Men. Coming in at number 10, it's Pickles. I think his name alone just made me want to include him on this list. Pickles is what is known as a Bamp, a race of demons who are basically little Nightcrawler-like imps, who possess similar attributes and powers as Nightcrawler and Azazel. Pickles himself lived inside Beast's van and was a backup in case anyone needed immediate transport somewhere, but he would later travel with Jean Grey and the X-Men in Jean Grey number 1 from 2017. As a Bamp, Pickles can teleport by displacing himself into the Brimstone dimension, travel through it, and then return to the original dimension at a certain distance from the point of departure. But unlike Nightcrawler, Pickles doesn't require foreknowledge of his destination in order to safely teleport there. But much like Nightcrawler, Pickles can stick to objects with the surface of his hands and feet, and he's got a sweet little prehensile tail. This little imp also possesses an unknown degree of muscle memory mimicry, which enables him to quickly learn and perform new martial arts with little instruction or training. He's definitely one of those few minor X-Men characters, but he's just so cute. Number 9. Gazing Nightshade. First appearing in X-Men Blue number 6 in June of 2017, the Madripoor mutant calling herself Gazing Nightshade was part of a ruthless mutant vigilante group who were inspired by Wolverine called the Raksha. The group was stopped by Jimmy Hudson and the X-Men and eventually were invited to the X-Mansion. Gazing Nightshade has the really cool mutant ability of despair inducement, meaning whoever Nightshade gazes upon enters into a trance-like state of sorrow, fueled by their deepest regrets. And to make it just 10 times more metal, both the eyes of Gazing Nightshade's victims and her own eyes bleed when she uses her powers. I mean, that's not the coolest thing. She joins Polaris' makeshift roster of X-Men in X-Men Blue number 25 in 2018 before going back to the Raksha. Number 8. Trinary. Shilpa Khatri first showed up in 2018's X-Men Red number 1 as a new mutant joining Jean Grey's team of X-Men. Shilpa was a young mutant from India who developed technopathic mutant abilities, and first used them to top up the bank accounts of every working Indian woman using the money from 25 of the biggest earning CEOs in India. That's pretty cool. And while I think that's awesome and kind of hilarious, her father did not, and he reported his own daughter to the Indian Mutant Defense Force, which is where Jean Grey and her team rescued Trinary from. As a technopath, she has the ability to psychically control all forms of technology, such as computers, cell phones, and all that junk. Her limitation at this time is that she can only control technology that is in her line of sight, and her range is currently undetermined, but judging from other technopaths, she has potential to get much stronger. It just remains to be seen. Number 7. Gabby Kenny. We included Laura Kinney on the last list, so is it cheating to use her clone? I personally say no, because Gabrielle Kinney, aka Honey Badger and recently Scout, is just awesome. Like a little feisty killing machine with adamantium bone sickles and crazy regenerative healing factor, and that also improves her strength, speed, and stamina. Gabby first appeared in All New Wolverine number 2 in 2015, and she had a long history that, just like her other clone sisters, intertwined a lot with Laura, her genetic sister, and Wolverine, her genetic father. As Honey Badger, Gabby was seemingly a favorite of her sister, and basically became a sidekick to Laura Kinney, joining Jean Grey's X-Men alongside her sister in X-Men Red number 1 in 2018. While Laura went on to become the new Wolverine, Gabby would go on to become Scout, and one of the main Wolverine family members. Oh, also her and Jonathan the Unstoppable, an actual Wolverine, like the animal, shared an immediate bond, and he is basically her pet, which is both really cool and kind of hilarious. Number 6. Gentle. Although Nesno Abidemi, son of a Wakandan woman and a Russian man, first appeared in 2006, he was only a student at the Xavier Institute until he joined the X-Men in 2009's Uncanny X-Men. Because of his father, Gentle was never treated right in Wakanda, even by his own mom, which is a little hypocritical because, you know, she got pregnant with a dude, but whatever. He was raised at the Wakandan royal court and was sent to the Xavier Institute by Aurora Monroe when his powers first manifested. Gentle's mutant ability is muscle mass expansion, which allows him to increase his size and strength almost instantly. He's done battle with a Sentinel, and his strength is said to rival Colossus, with his resting strength increasing every time he uses his powers. Because of his poor treatment though, he suffered from psychological trauma, which caused him to suffer great pain pain and seizures. To help his condition, Gentle's entire body was covered with vibranium tattoos to prevent him from overexerting, and they essentially keep him alive, with the added side effect of looking sick. Number 5. Oya. When Hope Summers came back from her future travels with Cable, there were 5 mutants whose X gene and abilities activated. These 5 were known as the Lights, and they were the first mutants since the events of M-Day, making them pretty important. Edie Onkokwo was 14 years old, living in Nigeria's Delta State when her mutant powers of thermokinesis activated, causing her to accidentally burn down her village. She was almost taken out by the military until the X-Men showed up to save her. Now, under the direction of Hope, and with the consent of Cyclops, the Lights began training as a rescue team for any other new mutant manifestations. Idie's ability of thermokinesis allows her to alter temperatures around her, with the limitation being that she cannot simply create hot or cold temperatures. She can only rechannel pre-existing temperature, meaning she needs the presence of heat to generate cold, and cold to generate heat, and vice versa. Oya first appeared in Uncanny X-Men number 528 in September of 2010. Number 4. Armor. Hisako Ichiki lived in Tokyo, Japan with her brother and parents when her mutant abilities activated, and she joined the Xavier Institute. She first appeared becoming just a student and member of Kitty Pryde's Paladin Squad in Astonishing X-Men Volume 3 in 2004, and would go on to become a member of the New X-Men after participating in Emma Frost's Battle Royale in New X-Men Volume 2 number 23 and 26. But finally, she officially joined the main X-Men team in Astonishing X-Men Volume 3 number 25 in 2008. Hisako's powers are pretty cool. As you might suspect from her name, Armor can generate strong, powerful, durable, and impenetrable psionic exoskeleton armor around her entire physical body that augments her strength, endurance, stamina, agility, invulnerability, and durability. The power of her abilities are greatly tied to her family and bloodline. So, for example, the strength, power, and size of her psionic armor greatly enhances when her relatives pass away. Which, I mean, if she was a villain, that could go south pretty quick. But luckily she's not, so we're good. Number 3. Bloodstorm. This is probably a bit of a spicy choice for this list. Bloodstorm is none other than Aurora Monroe, only she is from a different universe. Earth 21710 to be specific. This version of Aurora was a thief living in the streets of Egypt when she attempted to pickpocket a man who turned out to be Dracula. She was turned into a vampire and eventually managed to free herself from Dracula's control and find new purpose among the X-Men. Unfortunately for her though, her thirst for blood overpowered her, which resulted in her ending at least both Beast and Professor X. But it could have been more. She was recruited by the Goblin Queen of Earth 91240 as one of her Hexmen, and they invaded Earth 616, where Bloodstorm decided to switch sides and help the time-displaced X-Men Blue team. She was eventually recruited to the team by Cyclops. Now this is obviously Aurora Monroe, and even if she is from another universe, she is still extremely powerful. But on top of that, she has all the powers of vampirism, including being capable of transforming her body into mist and a flock of bats, and using her gaze to hypnotize people into doing her bidding. Number 2. Genesis. Honestly, don't know how y'all are gonna feel about this one. Evan Sabanur was created by Phantom X as a clone of Apocalypse, and as such has a lot of his powers, including superhuman strength, superhuman durability, and self-molecular manipulation, meaning Evan has total control over the molecular structure of his own body, enabling him to alter his form at will. He is able to transform his limbs into various weapons and equipment, such as blades and bludgeons for combat, or rocket boots for flight, as well as being able to alter his body to change in size. Evan also has a healing factor that can regenerate from serious injury like getting gashed by Daken's claws. And he can adapt his body to any disease or environment at will, and sometimes subconsciously. Another small, innocent ability Evan has is the potential for virtually any conceivable superhuman power ever. He once showcased fire or plasma breath when fighting Faithful John's mind drones, and also has a degree of energy projection, able to project dematerializer blasts from his eyes and emit energy blasts from his hands. He first appeared in Uncanny X-Force number 7 in 2011, but wasn't on the X-Men team until 2014, and even then, kind of as a student. As the clone of Apocalypse, Evan will potentially develop any of the powers possessed by him, but it also means people do fear him, which leaves him with a bit of an insecurity. And number 1, Darwin. Even somewhat casual fans of the X-Men know who Darwin is, if only because he was that guy who is supposed to be able to adapt to anything but gets de-lifed in like 2 seconds in the X-Men First Class movie. People were mad. And honestly, yeah, so was I. That makes no sense. Adapt to this, shut up. He literally could have. Armando Munoz, or Darwin, was first introduced in X-Men Deadly Genesis number 2 in December of 2005, and he would join the X-Men shortly after that. Darwin's powers are just the coolest. He's able to adapt to any situation, so basically, using his powers, he's been able to grow functioning gills after being submerged in water, gain night vision after being in the dark for several seconds, be able to survive without oxygen when in space, his skin has become fireproof when it's exposed to flames, and after touching Hela, Darwin became a death deity and gained powers similar to Hela, including immortality, Asgardian physiology, and control over life and death. There was even a time his intelligence increased itself to understand the Shi'ar language by looking at it in written form, although sometimes his powers do not always take the effect he wants, like, for example, during his fight with the Hulk, his body teleported him away from the battle rather than supplying a power that would actually allow him to defeat the Hulk, which is kind of hilarious to be honest.
Number 10. Tempest. Eva Bell first made her appearance in All New X-Men issue number 1 in 2013. She could be viewed as one of the most useful of the New Mutants to surface in the past decade, because her abilities are so based in something that the X-Men and mutants and, well, sort of all of Marvel seem to get involved with more often these days. Time travel. Tempest has chronokinesis powers which allow her to alter the way time moves around her in the area she is in, and allow her to create time bubbles which she can send through time for a short while, and even time travel fully herself. She has been referred to as near Omega level, and honestly with a bit more control over her powers I could see her making the Omega list any day. Tempest is also one of the House of X's The Five, and helps to bring deceased mutants back to life by speeding up the growth process within their eggs. It sounds creepy when I say it like that, but more will be explained. Number 9. Morph. I really like this mutant because with him they found a way to make shapeshifting abilities unique again, and somehow make them even weirder and cooler at the same time. Morph, aka Benjamin Deeds, is able to shapeshift into those he spends time with, slowly, over time. So the more time he spends with you, the more he starts to resemble you. He really is the embodiment of what it feels like to live in somebody else's shoes. As he fuses with you, he takes on your look, your voice, and also exudes an energy that encourages you to trust him, to feel relaxed and calm in his presence. I just think this is such a cute way to imagine shapeshifting, and a useful way to use it as well, potentially calming your target into submission as opposed to causing them harm. It's kinda like the anti-mystique of shapeshifting, I think. Number 8. Gold Balls. Gold Balls recently became a very important mutant in the comics. He is part of a group known simply as the Five on Krakoa. Together he and Proteus, Elixir, Hope Summers, and Eva Bell can help to bring forth new life, or well, sort of old life really. They are able to resurrect any mutants who have been lost by cloning them, and with the help of X, restoring their previous memories so that in essence, they kind of are the lost mutant returned. Gold Ball's power is similar to Minoru Mineta of My Hero Academia. Instead, however, Fabio Medina produces gold balls, hence his name. Originally these were simply seen as balls of various sizes which could be launched in a sort of an attack mode. Later it was discovered that they were actually infertile eggs, and with the help of the Five would become the home of unborn resurrected mutants who had fallen. Gold Balls made his first appearance in Uncanny X-Men Volume 3, Issue number 1. Number 7. Ellie Camacho. Eleanor is the daughter of Deadpool and Carmelita Karma Camacho. That's right, Deadpool is a daughter, if you can believe it. Carmelita and Deadpool were being held hostage together, and fearing that she would die, Carmelita decided she wanted her last acts to be those of love. Her and Deadpool were rescued right in the middle of this act of love, but he still managed to get her pregnant. She initially raised baby Ellie on her own, but did track down Deadpool to at least get him to recognize his daughter and take some responsibility. That was during the time that he was actually working for Butler and constantly having his mind wiped. Butler saw the child as an opportunity, and before Deadpool could scare off Carmelita and baby Ellie, took a blood sample from the baby. This happened in Deadpool Volume 3, Issue 34 out of 2013. And in this issue we learned that the results of that blood test proved that Ellie had an active X gene, meaning she was a mutant who would one day grow up to manifest powers. We don't know what they are yet, but I'm sure they're gonna be amazing. Also, she's a mutant, so cool. Number 6. Nature Girl. Nature Girl was given her name by Eye-Boy. The two mutants also went on a bit of an adventure together while babysitting Jubilee's adopted son, Shogo. And the two were both a part of Jubilee's team of mutants to train at Kitty Pryde's Xavier Institute for Mutant Education and Outreach in Central Park. They are also really cute together, with Eye-Boy being covered in eyes and Lynn with her little antlers being a master of nature. Lynn Lee, aka Nature Girl's powers consist of an ability to bend nature to her will and communicate with it. She is able to soothe beasts, can control the elements, and can even heal nature. Truly the mutant we could all use right now, am I right? come on, heal this terrible Earth that we have destroyed. Lin Lee was also a student at the Jean Grey School for Higher Learning. Number 5. Matthew Malloy. One of the most powerful mutants who kinda no longer exists. But he could still exist, I guess, if writers decided to bring him back. He was basically written out of existence when Tempest went back in time and prevented his parents from ever meeting, meaning he was never conceived and therefore did not exist in present day. This had to happen because Malloy proved too strong and unstable, with his powers being strongly linked to his emotions. He emitted a blast of energy that ended up destroying most of Atlanta. He also has strong reality warping powers, telekinesis, and telepathy. He could also even manipulate matter. It was even suggested that he was beyond Omega level in the comics, so although writers have written him out, I wouldn't be surprised at his power level if he didn't find a way to return to the comics. He didn't even make it to 10 issues in Uncanny X-Men Volume 3. Still, he demonstrated such power that I feel he's really worth mentioning. You know, we might see him again someday. Who knows? Number 4. Sapna. While Sapna may have only existed in corporal form for only a short time in the comics, it's possible she could actually live on forever in Magic's Soul Sword. Sapna was a young mutant girl who appeared to have magical powers at first. This intrigued Magic, who wanted to know the extent of the young mutant's powers, and so took her to see Doctor Strange. It turned out that she actually had language-based powers, but because her powers manifested while she was in limbo, this caused her to absorb all of the magical and demonic knowledge of that realm, meaning that she could control demons and open gateways to other realms and dimensions. Magic was attempting to train her when Sapna had visions of doing harm to Magic, and that made her run away. The being that offered her help only wanted to use her, and Magic was forced to kill Sapna with her soul sword. However, this also preserved Sapna's soul within it, allowing her to live on in spirit, sort of. So she's like dead, but she's in her soul sword, so, you know. Lives on in a sword. Sounds boring. Number 3. Bailey Hoskins. Bailey is a mutant I wish we got to see more of. He is the star of the one-off, non-canon comic series X-Men Worst X-Man Ever. I say non-canon lightly because this is Marvel we're talking about, so everything is kind of canon, just living in an alternate reality. Bailey currently resides in a reality which isn't really quite established, temporarily suggested to be the alternate reality of 656, a placeholder for now. Bailey's mutant ability is self-detonation, which he can regrettably only use once, as he has no resurrection or healing powers to protect him. Well, you might think that makes him the worst X-Man ever. I would argue it is the one he chooses to use that power on and stand up against that is actually the worst in that comic series, the vile fascist mutant leader Riches. Number 2. Hindsight. While Nathaniel Carver might not appear to have the strongest power just yet, I'm certain, like most underrated powers, that with more control over his abilities, he could prove to be more useful than originally anticipated. Nathaniel, aka Hindsight, has the ability to see one's recent past upon making physical contact with them. He can also use this ability on objects, allowing him to see any psychic imprints left behind on that object, a power that Jean Grey actually also has. But one of my favorite things about Nathaniel was his fear of these powers getting in the way of a relationship that he started developing with fellow student Benji, aka Benjamin Deeds, aka Mork, who I mentioned earlier. Fortunately, love overcame fear and the two ended up together, and are admittedly adorable together. Yay! Future gay X-Men, bring them on, I'm ready. Give me all the gay X-Men. Number 1. Moira Mctaggert. One amazing revelation we got from the House of X Powers of X series was the truth behind Moira Mctaggert. Moira has always been painted as an ally to the X-Men, but in House of X we found out what really drew her to their cause. Although Moira has been a long-standing character in the comics, first appearing in 1975, it wasn't until recently that we discovered she was a mutant. Dun dun dun. It turns out that her power is to live her life again, allowing her to see the different outcomes of different futures and allowing her to effectively alter her own fate as well as the worlds with her life choices. Her resurrection power is an odd one, and Destiny confessed to Moira that she only saw her living a maximum of 11 lives, if she played her cards right. Still, when used correctly, it would appear to be a powerful mutant ability, as you see in House of X if you read it. If you haven't read it, what are you doing? Get out of here. Go read it. Number 10. Kid Omega. Kid Omega, aka Quentin Quire, has also been described as an Omega level telepath and telekinetic before. He joined up with the Xavier Institute later in the new X-Men series in issue 134. Quickly, Quentin became a prized student of Xavier's, who saw within him a great potential, as brilliant and as talented as he was. However, over time and with the revelation that he had been adopted, he became more rebellious and egotistical. He questioned Professor X and the Professor's dream for the world, for humans and mutant kind to coexist in harmony. He began using the mutant drug Kick and created a gang called the Omega Gang, which set out attacking humans. Eventually he was beaten down by the Stepford Cuckoos and he reformed, though he would continue to be known for having a bit of an attitude and a rebellious streak. But hey, isn't that why we love him? Or is that why we hate him? I don't know. You tell me. You be the judge. Quint inquire, love or hate. Number 9. Prodigy. Prodigy is David Elaine, a mutant who is often associated with the X-Men and who attended the Xavier Institute. He came to the famous mutant school after trying to hide his powers. David has always been a smart kid, but he started noticing one day that he knew things that he simply just couldn't have known, and that he didn't remember learning. It turned out that David had been telepathically absorbing knowledge and skill sets from the minds of those around him. Feeling bad about his ability, like it gave him an unfair edge and meant he was kind of cheating, he sought to hide it and doubled down on studying to improve his knowledge naturally. Unfortunately, the mutant hate group Purity ended up uncovering his secret and outing him as a mutant, causing him to turn to the Xavier Institute. He would lose his abilities on M-Day, but still remain a valuable hero with all of the knowledge he retained later becoming fully accessible to him again. Being a mutant with studious telepathic abilities, I also love that he was originally depicted as needing glasses. Though of course in a land of magic and superpowers, he was later cured of his need for corrective lenses by mutant Elixir. Number 8. Elixir. Josh Foley is an Omega level mutant. He found himself at the Xavier Institute after being rejected by his friends and his family because of his mutant status. Sad face. Originally he was part of the anti-mutant group, the Reavers, but discovered during a fight with some mutant students that he actually was a mutant himself with healing abilities, which he used to heal one of the fellow Reavers who was injured in the fight. He tried to hide his powers as long as he could, but eventually he got found out and outed. His powers allow him to manipulate the biological structure of organic matter within a certain proximity to him. He can use these powers to heal or to harm others, and is also able to sense one's life energy, and even transfer life energy from one being to another. Force heal ability. Most recently we saw him in the House of X as a member of the Five, a group of mutants whose powers when joined together allow them to resurrect other fallen mutants. He made his first appearance in New Mutants Volume 2. Number 7. Abigail Brand. Abigail Brand was created by John Cassidy and Joss Whedon, and made her comic book debut in Astonishing X-Men Volume 3. She is a no-nonsense badass who is half mutant and half alien. One of the first to show us that even those with alien heritage can also be mutant too. Brand is best known in affiliation with SWORD, a division of S.H.I.E.L.D. that seeks to guard the world against and deal with extraterrestrial threats. SWORD stands for Sentient World Observation and Response Department, in case you didn't know. And Brand serves as the commander of the organization, the head of the organization if you will. Her mutant power is contact pyrokinesis. She can produce blue or red flames on her hands and use those to burn through almost anything or anyone that gets in her way. So watch out for Abigail Brand, she'll mess you up. Number 6. Oya. Despite making her first appearance in Uncanny X-Men, the original X-Men series, Idye still didn't end up joining the group until 2010. Yeah, that original series went on for a long time. Idye made her first appearance in issue 528. Idye's powers involve thermal manipulation. She can convert thermal energy into extreme hot or extreme cold, but she does need thermal energy in order to be able to do this. She can't just like create flames or ice on her own. Idye was discovered by the X-Men through Cerebra. When her powers activated, she accidentally killed her family by burning down her village in Oyo State, Nigeria. The military showed up seeking to stop and destroy her, but Hope and Storm rescued her. Yay! Number 5. Brew. Oh my goodness, I love Brew so much. I love Brew too much. Calm down, Amanda. So Brew has to be one of the cutest mutants on this list, just FYI. Brew is a mutant and a member of the Brood alien race. Brood are typically born with an urge to kill and consume. They do not understand compassion and empathy in the same way that humans do. But Brew was born with compassion, which actually made him a mutant of the race, and also helped him to become independent, separating himself from the hive mind and developing his own sense of self with the ability to make his own decisions. Well, you might not think of compassion as a mutant ability. For the Brood, it very much is. In fact, when young Brood are born with such mutations, they are usually deemed as a reject and killed. But due to the dwindling population of the Brood Queen allowed Brood to live. He studied at Jean Grey's mutant school for higher learning. And he wears a cute little suit. It's so cute. Never thought Brood could be as cute, but there you go. There you have it. Anything is possible if you believe. Number 4. Genesis. Genesis was created by Phantom X using the World, a research facility created by the Weapon Plus program, which had been shrunken down to portable size. Think Hank Pym's Lil Quantum Lab in the Ant-Man and the Wasp MCU film, but smaller than that. Genesis, aka Evan Sabanur, is the clone of young Apocalypse. Phantom X created Evan to help overthrow Angel, who had become Apocalypse's Horseman of Death and sought to replace him. Evan was raised to be basically a good version of Apocalypse, what the X-Men villain would be like as a hero, if you will. Evan has already shown that he possesses some of the original Apocalypse's powers and abilities, including super strength and durability, matter manipulation, and energy manipulation. And it is likely that as he grows, he will develop even more of his abilities. Probably. Possibly. We'll see what happens. Number 3. Sprite. Not to be confused with the Eternal Sprite, this sprite is also known as Jiujing. In fact, she got her codename from Wolverine, who gave it to her in reference to not the Eternal Sprite, but to Kitty Pryde, who actually once went by the same codename. Upon having her mutant abilities manifest, Jia became determined to become the greatest X-Men ever, to honor her family and her country, China. Jia's mutant abilities are tied to her appearance. She has wings and resembles a fairy. Her skin is also durable and rock-like, and her body is somewhat morphable. Number 2. Shark Girl. Shark Girl was originally Ayer dos Santos, a young girl from Brazil who one day noticed an intense craving to eat fish. This was the first sign of her powers manifesting, which eventually resulted in her becoming a mutant were-shark. She ended up enrolling in the Jean Grey School for Higher Learning, but takes weekends off to return to her home in Brazil. Her powers allow her to resemble a shark while maintaining her own mind and memories, and not resemble a shark to the point that, she can't walk. She is more of a land shark usually, part humanoid, still able to stand and walk around on her legs and also use her hands. This form also enhances her physiology, giving her increased strength and speed and allowing her to breathe both underwater and on land. She was already a great swimmer, but her mutant powers enhance her ability even more. While in her shark form, however, she is also susceptible to going into a blood frenzy, like most sharks are occasionally known to do. So whatever you do, don't bleed around her. She might try to eat you. It's not her fault. Number 1. Amy. That's right, her name's just Amy. And we're going to finish it off with a sob story, to remind us of all the mutants we have both gained and lost over the years. Though with the 5 existing in House/Powers of X, maybe we'll get all those lost mutants back, eventually, at some point, unless things change. We'll see. Amy was a mutant who was trapped in the Red Skull's concentration camp on Genosha. She made her first appearance in Magneto Volume 3, issue number 9. Amy had illusion-based powers that became warped after suffering the horrors of the camp. When Magneto freed her, these powers started wreaking havoc. She ended up creating monsters and nightmares from others' fears and haunted psyches. Amy's powers allow her to create 3D constructs, and when these nightmarish constructs started to kill, it became apparent that either her or those whose nightmares she possessed needed to die in order to put a stop to her malfunctioning powers. Amy, being the angel that she is, decided to sacrifice herself, not finding much reason to live anyways, as tortured as she was. Poor Amy. Oh, she didn't even last 10 issues? I just feel really bad for her. No. Number 10. Eye Boy. While Trevor Hawkins may seem like an absurd mutant all covered in eyes and whatnot, I wouldn't write him off just yet. His mutation revealed itself following the events of the Avengers vs. X-Men. He has died multiple times since his introduction in the Wolverine and the X-Men series, but he always keeps randomly coming back. As I said, you might think his death has occurred so many times because his abilities could be deemed as lame. What use is being covered in eyeballs? Sounds more inconvenient than anything. But his multiple eyes have actually granted Trevor some pretty cool powers. For one, he's been shown to be able to use his eyes and the multiple perceptions from them in target practice, making him a really proficient marksman. His improved vision also allows him to be better at reading people's nonverbal cues, giving him greater insight into those people that he interacts with. People or mutants. This also translates into battle by giving him enhanced perception when it comes to an incoming attack, being able to tell when someone is about to pull a punch, etc, etc. And of course, his eyes also allow him to see on both a microscopic and a telescopic level, meaning he can see a little speck of dust or see clearly something that is quite far, far away. If you're wondering why I looked over there, I was looking far, far away. That's me trying to have telescopic vision. It's not working. Number 9. Triage. Triage made his first appearance in the all-new X-Men series. His powers involve life force control over other beings, and for a while some believed his powers also granted Christopher Muse immortality. However, Christopher appears to have died after being forcibly cured of his mutation, which in itself ended up killing him. With his powers, Triage was able to heal others and could even reanimate corpses, though their state of decay would remain unchanged. And if he had been granted more time, who knows? He may have even been able to completely heal and resurrect people, restoring them to a more lively and maybe less zombie-like appearance. Too bad he died. Although, is he dead? Is he not dead? Was he immortal? I don't know. Stay tuned to find out more. Number 8. Hijack. David Bond was first introduced in Uncanny X-Men Volume 3. He was revealed to be a technopath with a proficiency for controlling cars with his mind. He could start an engine, unlock and open doors, and make them drive around. A pretty sexy power in my opinion, but then again I have an affinity for cars because I'm a weirdo. After David discovered his powers, he went to parking lots at night to test them out, but ended up being caught by the local police. At the time his girlfriend Karen was with him. Terrified, she actually outed David as a mutant, getting him into quite a bit of trouble. David was then rescued by the X-Men while trying to flee the police. He later took the codename Hijack. appropriate, I think. His powers have also been shown to be able to manipulate more tech than just vehicles. He can actually use them to defeat sentinels and even interfere with technological armor. Not a mutant that Iron Man would like to go up against then. Although Iron Man is a bit of a technopath himself now. I wonder who would win in a fight. But I think my money's still on Hijack. His technopath powers seem stronger. Come at me if you think Iron Man would win, but I don't know. Number 7. Forget-me-not. Propositional existentialism incarnate. To be or not to be? That is the question. With forget-me-not, you can actually never be quite sure. Although, you probably would be more inclined to think that he didn't exist. Not to be in this case. Or scratch that. To not even know who I was talking about when I asked your opinion on if he existed or not. Forget-me-not's mutant powers are that he is imperceptible, meaning that no one even knows he's there or can sense him. This translates to technology, and this also goes beyond just the physical perception as well. Even telepaths struggle to take note of him. There are some weird exceptions to his power though, like Phantom X claiming that he could always detect Forget-me-not for some reason, and Psylocke has been able to find ways to locate him within others' memories through absences and holes that he leaves behind. But even Xavier himself had to set a once-an-hour reminder in his mind in order to remember Forget-me-not, and he was one of the most skilled at remembering him, so apparently other than Phantom X though, who could just remember him because his senses are real good. I don't believe it. I think Phantom X is fibbing. He's just trying to sound cool. It's like, I always knew he was here. I can see him right now. It's fine. He's overweight. Rude. Number 6. Gabrielle Kinney. Gabrielle Kenny has been through a series of codenames since her introduction in All New Wolverine in 2016. When Gabby was introduced, she got to play the role of Little Sis to another favorite mutant, X-23, Laura Kinney, who had actually adopted the codename Wolverine in that series. She was the all-new Wolverine, get it? See, Gabby is also a clone of Wolverine's, which makes her part of a weird kind of clone family. Ergo, her powers are also similar to those of Laura and Logan's. She has bone claws and a healing factor and enhanced senses. But she also has a different ability than her predecessors. She cannot feel pain, making her an extremely tough mutant to go up against. Also probably be hard for her to know when she's like getting close to being defeated. Like, I don't know, I can't feel it. Number 5. Rat King. A play on the Pied Piper, this mutant villain has the power of zoopathy, which allows him to control animals using music. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Zoopathy, zooapathy, it's kind of a weird word. He is the son of the Morlock Piper, whom he shares abilities with. When it was revealed that he was controlling local animals in Central Park into doing his bidding, Nature Girl and iBoy joined together to put a stop to him, freeing the animals from his control. Thus ended the reign of Rat King. Although, he's still around, just chilling in his flip-flops. Number 4. Trinary. Trinary is another technopath. Her abilities allow her to control various pieces of tech within her line of sight. Similar to Hijack, this also includes, but is not limited to, sentinels. In fact, born and raised in India, after discovering her mutant abilities, she used them to steal money from the top 5 highest earning CEOs' accounts. She then transferred and divided that money up between all the working women of India. Is it weird that I kind of love that? Because I kind of love that. Very Robin Hood. This later led to her imprisonment, which she managed to escape. She also appeared in House of X, working alongside the team of technopaths and Moira X, who worked on Project Sleeping Giant. Sleeping Giant was created to help monitor for the development of Nimrod tech, which would threaten mutant kinds and eventually humanity's own existence. Technopaths seem to be becoming more common in the mutant world, which I kinda love. It's like as our tech develops and grows, so too do those with powers surrounding it, who seem to be popping up more and more often. Trinary made her comic book debut in the X-Men Red series. Number 3. Maxime and Manon. Maxime and Manon are kind of like a mutant duo, so I thought I'd include them together. They're twins from the future, whose mutant powers activated before puberty, so they're kids. In the future, they attended the Xavier Institute for Young Mutants. However, they were then kidnapped and brought back to the present, where they were brainwashed by a Hob and used as evil little weapons. Scary weapons too, may I add. After being defeated, the two children were left in the care of Jean Grey. They had been good children before they were sort of corrupted, and it was believed that they could probably be redeemed. Their powers allow them together to severely mess with people's heads, telepathically. Maxime's powers allow him to manipulate people's emotions, while Manon can alter someone's memories. They both also possess some mind control abilities as well. A dangerous combination, as we saw in New Mutants Volume 3, issue number 4. If you haven't read that yet, go read it, because it's messed up. It's great. Number 2. Shade. Darnell Wade became inspired by New York superheroes, and he decided to build his drag persona around this inspiration, taking the drag name Shade. Also, can I just say that I love that Shade is wearing like a bunch of pouches like as a sash, it's amazing. Shade longed to star in a drag competition show, but her dreams were dashed when her friend Spillin' Tiana Taylor was chosen over her to compete. To add insult to injury, Tiana also spurned Shade on national television, ending their friendship. Shade returned to her apartment where the power had just been turned off, and it felt like she had, well, hit rock bottom when her mutant powers manifested. Shade's powers allow her to teleport herself and others to the Dark Force dimension. Since her introduction in Iceman Volume 4, she has taken the alias of Darkveil. Number 1. Gwenpool. Gwenpool has recently been retconned as a mutant. Due to her self-awareness of the world around her, she was able to alter her origins. In Gwenpool Strikes Back Volume 5, she uses her reality-altering powers to rewrite her own story and make herself a mutant, which Kamala Khan claimed had been the truth all along, and she had just blocked it out as a coping mechanism, making up the world of comics, which in truth was Gwen's real world. This allowed Gwenpool to move through a portal to Krakoa. Once there, she was welcomed by fellow mutants, including her ex, Quentin Quire. She even gave herself a House of X/Powers of X style character breakdown in one of the final pages of this issue. I guess we'll see if this ends up sticking, but for now at least it seems Gwenpool has joined the mutant ranks. And what a time to be a mutant! If there was ever a time I would want to jump into that world, it would be now. Or the 90s. When of course I could have all the pouches. Give me all the pouches. That's all I want in my costume.